Good evening, everyone. Jose J. Garcia, real estate investor, coach, and mentor. Another podcast this evening with a very special guest. Okay. The guest this evening here is a mobile home park owner. He has his own podcast, the MHP Show. I want to hear a little bit about that. And a real estate investor, Derek Vickers. Am I missing any of that on your title?
No, no. I mean, you could throw in all kinds of stuff if you wanted, but I think that sums it up
Sums
well,
it
and
up.
I'm sure we'll get into other stuff here too.
Absolutely. I do want to talk about your social media here in a bit, which is how we connected. I follow you for some time. And before went on the air, we talked about some of the great videos. So we definitely want to let people know how they can connect with you and follow you, learn some of this great stuff that you're doing. But for those that don't know you yet, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town in Virginia. My family's not rich. I didn't have a bunch of rich friends. I moved to Florida in 2012 with 300 bucks in my pocket. And I started selling insurance door to door. I ended up doing that for 10 years and I got is there a cursing rule on this?
No,
I
have
forgot.
at
Okay.
it.
So I got my ass kicked for a few years doing that. Ended up building it up to I had over 100 salespeople on my team. COVID hit. I always wanted to get into real estate. Our revenue was crushed in the insurance business because no one wanted to buy insurance. Like they
Mm.
just didn't. And I always wanted to get into real estate. I had a friend that was investing in mobile home parks. He said, "You need to look at this asset class." And so I did. I dove in. I sold insurance. I was good at cold calling people. So he told me, he's like, "Dude, you just got to start cold calling numbers." I was like, "Got it. I can do that." So I started doing that and closed my first park in September of 2020.
So you went from insurance right into mobile home parks.
Yes. Yes.
Interesting. And I mean, you had to be a hell of a sales agent. I mean, you selling insurance door to door. That's no easy skill. Kind of just, I guess,
No.
brought them over and voila, you stumbled upon. So why mobile home parks though? You could have done any real estate, traditional, whatever. Why parks?
Yeah, great question too. And I get asked this, and it's really interesting because one of the main reasons was that so I was underwriting multifamily deals, and I was in Orlando. So like if you're looking at deals in Orlando, it's $200,000 a door. I didn't just want to buy a duplex. I wanted to get a little bit of scale. And so I found mobile home parks I could get for 40 or 50,000 a site. So I could get a little bit more scale for less. The barrier to entry was less. And at that time, there wasn't as much competition as there was in apartments. So that was one big reason, but also just the underlying fundamentals of the asset class, which I'm sure your audience knows, decreasing supply and increasing demand. Like you can't
Mm-hmm.
build some of these things. And like some of the
Mm-hmm.
parks that we have, they're literally Tampa addresses. Like it's impossible. Like you're never going to be able to build that again. Like it's impossible. Right. And so I love that aspect and I love investing in Florida and the Southeast because population migration and, it's not, I mean, I don't know where you live, but where I live to rent a two-bedroom is 2,000 bucks plus.
Yeah.
And a mobile home park, it offers the cheapest place in town, and you can take an asset, the local trailer park that no one likes, and you can bring it up and make it into a nice place to live. So those are the main reasons. And there was a lot of upside to the deals.
So, see, for those of you listening, or those of you that do listen, that's how little we know of each other just yet. We just met, we just connected, and we're already bringing you value. That's commitment. So I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, by the way. So no, I get it absolutely. And that was my next question: is are you only in Florida investing in parks right now, or are you growing, getting into other state markets?
Yeah, so we've got some deals in North and South Carolina as well, but we're mainly in Florida. We've looked at expanding out to some other states. I don't like rural areas, and I know we'll get into kind of market analysis and stuff, but I like being around the bigger cities just for a
Mm-hmm.
demand factor. But we're mainly in Florida and we're looking at deals. We actually just got a contract signed on the deal in Florida today. So we're still heavily looking in the Florida area.
Okay, I know you mentioned from Virginia, so I get a lot of hits from up there. I just, if it wasn't so cold, I would jump
No,
on,
dude.
which I will eventually. But it's
Yeah.
So when you're looking for mobile home parks in Florida, what's some of the criteria? You looking for mini parks, mid-size? I want every pet possible, or
Yeah, so I like so it depends. So if it's in a great market, Orlando, Tampa, the Space Coast over there, like I'll do 30 lots, right? But typically 30 and up. But if we're going a little bit outside, like if I'm going to go buy something in Georgia, it's got to be 50 and up to make
yeah,
sense, right? But in Florida, you can make sense of a smaller park because the lot rent's higher. And so then you can
yeah,
sort of pay a manager to come in, and so you don't have to do the work on the ground day to day. I like city water and city sewer just like everybody, but it's not real. Like you're not going to buy anything if you're waiting for direct build city water and city
yeah.
sewer. So I've actually gotten smart on wastewater treatment plant systems, septic systems, and well systems. So that way I can get more comfortable with buying those type of assets. We have many parks with private utilities. So I'm not Granted, they do come with some more problems, right? So don't get me wrong, but I will buy those things if the deal is right. So I don't stray away from those, but obviously city water and city sewer is preferable. And also, I love deals with park-owned homes. I love going in and buying park-owned
Really?
homes and then coming and making deals with guys like you that come in and can fix them up. And I like vacant park-owned homes even more because I can actually sell that to someone, get market lot rent, and they can come in and fix it up. Like if you came in and want some of our parks, like we don't have any homes available now, but what we were doing, these investors loved it because I'm like, dude, I don't give a shit about the house. I'll pay me $500 for the house, right? As long as I get the lot rent. And I'll give
Mhm.
you a few months to fix up the house, right? So I love that aspect because we can increase the value of the property pretty quickly from doing that.
You said a couple things there. For those of you listening, again, public utilities. Don't let it be something to limit you, but that's huge. That's definitely a big factor when analyzing this. And we don't have the time to get specific on here. I'm sure Derek could walk us through every little step. Maybe you can connect with them later on, and that's between y'all. But definitely, and it sounds like there's opportunities there. So you do work with certain Lonnie dealers, as we call investors, who take on more onesies, twosies.
Yeah, yeah, and I love working with those guys, especially if, you're experienced and, we've worked with some that it hasn't worked out, but
Mm,
you can tell who has their shit together and who doesn't, right? If you say, "Hey, I've done this. Hey, we're going to come in and we're going to do this. It's going to be done by this time," and you follow through on those commitments, I'm like I love creating long-term relationships, and so we will do that. And the ones that we've vetted properly and talked to and built a relationship with, it works out well.
Now, these parks, you said obviously the lot rents are higher. Typically in Florida, that's what we see. I know we have a couple homes at Venice Beach. I think lot rent's 800 now a
Oh yeah.
month. So, but that's a older age community. Are these all age communities you have, or are they more older?
No, they're all age. They're all age communities. Yeah.
Okay, interesting, interesting. Financing for a mobile home park. That's a big question that comes in all the time. It's like nobody's lending. It's all where you look. But where would you typically look to get lending for some of these parks?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways that you can do that. There's great mortgage brokers. So, like I don't like mortgage brokers are great, especially the ones that do mobile home parks. They know all the freaking lenders that are going to lend on these some of these value add deals. Like they know, right? Yes, you have to pay them a percentage on the loan amount, which is 1 point. But then you don't have to dial for dollars. You can focus on the due diligence. You can focus on getting the money together for the deal instead of cold calling these banks and talking to a bunch of people that don't know what they're talking about with mobile home parks most of the time. So you can do that, or you can try, like if you're buying a park in such and such place, you can go to the local credit union. You can go. I'd like to stick to the more local banks, especially if it's a value add deal where there's rents really low, or there's a lot of park owned homes. But now I'll tell you, Jose, is that more banks have opened up to this asset class because if you have a business plan to get it to an all tenant owned home park, I mean, it's really the only asset class that can be 100% collected, right? Because apartments, you're always like storage, you're always kind of churning a little bit. But like when people move in our parks, they stay there, right? You're
Yeah.
getting the lot rent every month. And so certainty of income for the banks is huge. And so there's more banks that are open to that. So there's mortgage brokers and then your local banks and credit unions. And you can get as creative as you want, seller financing, hard money.
Yeah, you need strong keys that a bank will look on there. Size of the park. I know up here we see it sometimes where they even require it needs to be paved or just certain specifics that will be a complete yes or no.
Well, it's easier for a bank to do a deal if the loan size is over $1 million. And I'll tell you why. It's typically because they're a little lazy. It's the same paperwork for them to do a $500,000 loan as it is a $5 million loan. And typically the people that are doing those deals, they're getting paid like it calculates into their sales. So it's more work for less, or the same amount of work for less. But generally, if the deal covers the debt service, the DSCR, if I don't know if your people know what that is, but so the net income of the property must be able to pay the debt service by 1.3 times. So if your debt service, the amount to your debt payment throughout the year is 100 grand, then the park's net income needs to be 130 grand. Does that make sense? There's got to be
Yeah.
some wiggle room there in case there's some fallout or somebody doesn't pay or whatever. But if you can hit those numbers and it's a good deal, the bank is going to look at the deal more than anything, and then they're going to look at you and your experience. And you don't necessarily have to have mobile home park experience. You can just have business experience. Like, hey, I've flipped this many homes, and I've got these many tenants paying me every month, and I'm managing it. And so that's experience. I always tell people in my courses and stuff, I'm like, guys, people discount their experience. Like I
Mhm.
managed 100 freaking salespeople. It's wild. It's crazy. It's commission. People are fighting over shit. Like that's skills. That's skills. And the bank just wants to see some of that stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges, risks when engaging in buying a park?
Well, yeah, the infrastructure issues. The infrastructure issues, if you don't know how to do proper due diligence, if you don't know how to look at
Mhm.
the nuances of a septic system or a wastewater system, you can get screwed pretty easily,
Mhm.
right? Because you can have, you know, this big infrastructure cost that you don't have the money for. And maybe you got to bring someone else into the deal to save it, which dilutes your equity. So that's a huge mistake that I see. And then like something before that is like I see a lot of people make mistakes. They're looking at a deal. It's like, hey, I got $1 million deal. I know I got to bring 300 grand to the table, but you forgot closing costs and you forgot CapEx, capital expenditures, the roads, the lights, the septic. Maybe you got to replace one septic, but people don't bring that additional money to the table for that stuff.
Mhm.
And so they get into the deal and they're like, shit, we're spending so much money, but you should have went and did the proper due diligence first to say, hey, I know we're going to have 50 grand in expenses here. Let's bring that to the table up front. So when that happens, we can take care of it. And the last thing on this is that I like to overfund deals. And that if we don't use the money, if I'm comfortable with the septic system or the well or the treatment plant, I'll just redistribute that to investors. Right. It's like, hey, we're going to bring in an extra 100 grand for utilities because it's
Okay.
private and we think something could mess up, but we're going to get it tested and we're going to see how it goes. And if it blows up, we've got it. But if it doesn't, I can just redistribute that money. So that's just be smart about, especially if you're bringing money to the table, what you're bringing money for.
Are you better in these parks to keep them, or are you flipping any of them?
No, we actually haven't flipped any of them, like exactly like gotten it, fixed it up and sold it. We've
Mhm.
typically flipped it in the sense of got it, doubled or tripled the value,
Mhm.
refinanced it, taken money out, kept it's cash flowing, and then just went and bought more. Now, if someone comes and offers like a ridiculous amount for the park, definitely everything's for sale for the right number.
There you
I
go.
mean, like for sure.
Yeah. You mentioned at the beginning of the video that in comparison to houses, rents, and condos or apartments, obviously mobile homes are the last of affordability housing. That's where it's at. Stigma or not, you get more for your buck and something you can afford. Now, I almost like to compare the markets between Georgia and Florida because it seems like more people in Florida stay there longer. I've seen that in our homes as well. Are you at 100% capacity? And how much in need and demand are you seeing right now?
I mean, it's a ton. Like if we have a house come on the market, if somebody moves out or we buy it back from somebody for some reason, it's like boom. I mean, and it's if we put something on Facebook Marketplace, which is how we judge a lot of demand in the market. I mean, if we put like a rent to own house or a rent credit house up, it's like, I mean, the number
Mhm.
of messages you get. And if you're doing that in Orlando or Tampa, it is insane. It is insane. So the demand for this stuff is just it's massive. And I'm sure it's like that if you go we were looking at a deal outside of Atlanta, which I like. And like same kind of, action that's around there and the hustlers, a lot of stuff going on there. Tons of demand.
When it comes to the maintenance, I know you mentioned park owned, which a lot of the park owners that we invest with and we do business with, they're kind of more of, I want to own the dirt. I don't care about the
Yeah.
home. I don't want to hear about it kind of thing. And it's because they don't want to play landlord. Landlord comes with, like anything else, pros and cons. We all know that listening on here. But how much of the maintenance is there, I guess, when you first start out and a lot of these homes are park home owned?
Well, it's a good question. And interestingly enough, this is just from observation. And I don't know whatever it is, if it's the demographic of people, but like people don't usually call for repairs. And then if they don't pay their rent and you have to send them a rent notice that they're going to get evicted, then they're like, oh, it's a fucking hole in the ceiling and there's shit everywhere. And there's like, it's like, I don't know if it's my theory is that, they go to work. They're like, yeah, I'm not going to call them at work. I get home from work. I want to do whatever. I'm not going to call them, and then it just gets kicked down the road, right? But there is some, but we try to get rid of them as quickly as possible. But with that being said, and I'll tell you, yes, owning the dirt is better, but there's still shit you got to deal with. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not completely passive. The longer you have the park, the easier it is to operate because you've brought in good tenants, you've done background checks, you've cleaned it up, you've got all the crazy people out of there, and it's just easier to operate the longer it seasons.
Yeah, no, funny you mentioned that. It's like it almost seems when we ever had to take people to court for evictions, that's when all those things came out. You haven't fixed this. You haven't.
Ah,
I love how the judge hits them with that's not an excuse to not pay rent. There's ways to obviously address that, but yeah, it is funny. We once had an electrician who earlier on kind of used that on us. Hey, something is wrong with this. Just take it off my rent. Later on we caught up and it's like no, if anything's wrong we'll send our own people, so they
yeah,
will take advantage using that.
they
So
will.
any negative trends that you're seeing? A lot more investors are getting into mobile home parks. They see the lucrative, they see the great investment that I think they are. Any negative side effects or things we should be focusing on?
As far as what, like in the operations or just
Parks. We're seeing a lot of people get in and want to do quick flips. I'm kind of seeing a lot of that now. Little repairs, no repairs, and they think it's just almost like a house. Do a little to anything and let me mark it up because there's a need and demand for it.
yeah, are you talking about the park itself or just the homes?
The park.
Yeah, yeah, and so yeah, you've seen guys try to come in and do that, but from what I've seen, it's more of guys that came in and are like they bought the passive investment pitch, and they got in and they're like, "Fuck, this is a lot of work. Like this isn't easy." Right? And so we're looking at a deal right now where the guy bought it 2 years ago and he's like, fuck, I want out. I'll take a two or $300,000 hit to get out of this deal because it was too much work. It's park owned homes. He didn't convert them. It's a mess. The tenants are whatever. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but it's a mess. And I've seen that in guys that have tried to do that and they've ran into that problem because operationally they thought it was going to be easy because they just own the dirt, right? But
Mhm.
no, I mean, there's still old infrastructure. There's still stuff that happens. You didn't, the problem with buying a park that's all tenant owned is that you didn't do the background checks on everybody. So Lord knows who mom and pop put in there. we had, so I'll tell you a funny story. tell you a funny story real quick on that. I was at our one of our parks, the office, one day. We're still turning this bad boy around, and I'm in there with the two property managers, and we get a knock on the door, and the guy shuts the door. He's dressed in normal clothes, and he's like, "Hey," he's like, he shows me his badge. He's a U.S. Marshal. So apparently something had aired that there was a guy from America's Most Wanted being harbored in one of our mobile homes. They never found the guy, but like that's what we didn't put that person in there, the person that he was staying with. So like that's some of the stuff you could run into, which could cause problems.
Wow. Never a dull moment in the mobile communities. That's for sure. It's crazy. What are two, three tips that you would suggest to anyone new getting into mobile home parks?
Yeah, I mean, like if you're new and you want to get into this business, first I would decide and commit and be like, I want to freaking go buy parks. That's what I did.
Mm,
And then you need to find a market. Like, hey, I want to buy deals in wherever, Atlanta, Georgia, right? And within an hour of Atlanta, Georgia, right? And then you need to decide what kind of deals that you want to buy. You know, why are you investing? Are you investing for cash flow? Are you investing for appreciation? Tax purposes or whatever that is, because the biggest question I get, Jose, is that, hey, Derek, how the hell do I tell if a deal is good or not? And I'm like, well, it's a loaded question because you have to know what kind of deals you want. Like a deal that's good for you may not necessarily be good for
mm,
me. We bought a deal just for depreciation purposes before and tax benefits, right? So the numbers weren't great, but we weren't buying it for that reason. So you have to define what that kind of deal is you want and then start going around and underwriting deals so you can figure out like how these numbers work, how the back of the napkin works. Go on LoopNet. Yes, all the deals are probably crappy and picked over, but you still have to run the numbers on them. Same with Correxy, Mobile Home Park Store. You can go to those places and look at deals and just run the numbers. And then the hardest part for people, you got to freaking pick up the phone. You got to call somebody. I'm sorry. It's uncomfortable, but you got to do
cold
it.
calling. Yep, yep. That's the
Yeah.
number one, and follow up. Well, we were just doing a coaching on that, and that's kind of what I was talking about. Is like you make two calls today, and you're expecting this. You know, it doesn't work that way. So
No.
definitely, the work is definitely a huge one. I think a lot of people that get into mobile home parks, and they're lazy. They don't really want to do the work. They thought it was an easy investment, and it's not impossible, but you got to get dirty from time to time and get in it. So you
Yeah.
seem to be more hands-on involved in that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at first you kind of have to be, especially when you're turning over these park-owned homes. But one thing I wanted to tell you, to piggyback on what you were teaching earlier, the freaking follow-up. I freaking called a guy 2 days ago. I had an hour conversation with him twice. He didn't fucking remember who I was. And this was like 2 or 3 weeks before. And he's like, "Oh, sorry, dude, I don't remember who you are." So, I mean, you got to follow up.
Yeah, yeah. What does Ryan Serhant say? Does it you stop following up when they die? So I may be a
Right.
little aggressive, but consistency is key. So
For sure.
Derek, a lot of people are going to be listening on this video here, and obviously, you've given some great tips on here. We'll have to do this again, but how are some ways that people can connect with
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not hard to find at all. I'm Derek Vickers 885 on every social media platform, all of them. There's not one that I'm not on. YouTube, I post videos on YouTube and then on iTunes and Spotify. We have the MHP Show podcast. That's MHP Mobile Home Park Show. I interview people every week. I just recorded another episode today. Sometimes it's me running my mouth on there. So it's a lot of fun. I mean, I've got a ton of stuff out there. If you go on my Instagram and go to my link tree, I've got an ebook there, and I have a fantastic masterclass webinar. It's an hour, it's free, you can download it, where I go from the basic definitions of mobile home park investing, the basic terms, all the way up to teaching you the basics of underwriting, how to find a deal, and actually closing that deal at the end. So all that's free on my page. You can go check that
you?
out.
There you go. All of y'all hit the like, subscribe, and we're going to put all his links to his videos and social media on this video also. Do you do one-on-one mentoring with anyone, coach directly?
Yeah, so we have a coaching program that
Okay.
we do, and we set, if anybody's interested in that, you can shoot me a DM and we'll set up a call. My team will set up a call with you, and we can we tailor make those for people depending on what, how much involvement they want. And then also we'll partner with people on deals too. So we've got some deals where we're partnering with people. We help people out, people that want to get in the business.
Hmm.
Um, we've got a bunch of connections to finances, to banks, to attorneys. Like we can help people get through closing that first deal, which I know it's like the show I recorded today was like why you don't have your first deal. And I talked about some of the stuff. So that'll be coming out too. Look at that. Look for that.
That sounds like a good one. 7 years ago when I started, it seemed like nobody was doing this. Nobody was teaching. This stuff just got easier. For those of you listening, Derek's sitting here telling you he's got free stuff you can just go and pick up. I mean, tips, nuggets, education's there. You got to get it. So, uh, Derek, any last piece of advice you want to share with those audience following us on here?
Yeah, the last thing I would say is like, hey, if you want to do this, and just to piggyback on what I said before, just commit to it. Like you can do it. You don't have to be an Ivy League scholar. You don't have to go to Yale or Harvard. Like you don't have to be this use big words. Like I probably still pronounce things wrong. I'm from a southern, I'm from the sticks of Virginia. So you can do it, man. Like don't make less of yourself. Like you can go close a deal. Like you can do it. It's not that difficult. You just gotta put your big boy pants on and pick up the phone and do it.
Don't overthink it. Okay. Don't overthink it.
Right.
Just do it like Nike says, or Derek in this case. And if reach out to him. I'm sure he'd be happy to maybe share some content or help you any way he can. So, Derek, it has been awesome having you on here. I know the time would fly, always does. We'll have to do this again some other time, but thank you for joining me this evening.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Till next time, thank y'all for watching.